Welcome all. In this lecture, we are going to discuss the procedure to plot a polar plot. So, there are 5 steps which are associated in plotting polar plot. Moving on to the step number 1, that is determine the open loop transfer function that is given as g of s of a system. So, first of all, we have to determine the open loop transfer function that is g of s. Moving on to second step, that is determination of sinusoidal form of transfer function which is given to us. Since the transfer function g of s is determined in the first step, now for the determination of sinusoidal form, we have to replace s in the transfer function that is g of s with j omega. So, for example, if g of s is given as s plus 1, then this implies that by replacing s with j omega, we get g of j omega equals to j omega plus 1. So this is the sinusoidal form of transfer function. Moving on to next step, that is writing the equation for magnitude. So after finding the sinusoidal form of transfer function, we have to find out the magnitude. So discussing the previous example, that is g of j omega equals to j omega plus 1. So if we want to find out its magnitude, then it will be written like that: mod of g of j omega. This is the mod symbol. So mod of g of j omega is equals to under the root x square plus y square. So square of this term plus square of this term. After calculating the magnitude of sinusoidal form, we have to find out the equation for phase angle. The phase angle of sinusoidal form is represented by this symbol. So the phase angle, that is g of j omega, is represented as, for example, if g of j omega is given as j omega plus 1, then its phase angle will be equals to tan inverse y over x. So this is the y value which is in the imaginary form, and it is the real value that is in the real form. So first of all, we have to take a tan inverse, then we have to write a imaginary number, that is omega, divided by a real number, that is 1. Moving on to the step number 5, that is determination of the value of m, which is magnitude that we calculated earlier, mod of g of j omega, and phi, that is phase angle, that is angle of g of j omega for the various values of omega. Since in the previous lecture we studied that the range of omega lies between 0 to infinite, so we have to calculate the various values of m and phi for the different values of omega, but the value of omega should always lie between 0 to infinite. So this is all about the procedure to plot a polar plot. Thank you.